Adam Silver done added more fuel to the flame, exposing exactly what I was thinking was going on in this CBA negotiation, man.
The WNBA universe just exploded after Adam Silver made a single remark that sent every player, fan, and analyst into turmoil. During what was meant to be a calm update on the league's future, Silver dropped a bombshell confirming there would be no significant salary increase for WNBA players in the forthcoming CBA cycle.
All right, so Adam Silver ended up getting on the NBC News, and he was talking about the CBA negotiation that's going on between, of course, the owners and the players, and he absolutely said something that pissed the WNBPA off.
Players felt deceived, fans branded it disrespectful, and social media blazed with outrage. But what were Silver's exact words, and why did they strike such a powerful nerve? Let's dissect the moment that set the league on fire overnight.
Should they be getting a larger share of the revenue in the WNBA?
Yes. I mean, I think the share isn't the right way to look at it because there's so much more revenue in the NBA. I think you should look at it in absolute numbers in terms of what they're making, and they are going to get a big increase in this cycle of collective bargaining, and they deserve it.
It all began when NBA Commissioner Adam Silver appeared in a televised interview intended to highlight the league's financial growth and upcoming CBA discussions. But instead of alleviating concerns, his words poured gasoline on an already simmering issue. When questioned if WNBA players were entitled to a higher revenue share, Silver didn't mince words. He stated, "The share model isn't the right way to look at it." He asserted that since the NBA generates far more money and the WNBA is not yet profitable, players ought to focus on absolute numbers, not percentages. That single phrase, "not profitable," was enough to make the internet.
I think share is the wrong way to look at it, because there's so much more money being made in the NBA. And this is the problem, okay? This is the problem that is going on in the CBA negotiation. You can't increase that number to half like the NBA because there are so many other hands in the cookie jar, fam.
To many players, it sounded like a polite way of saying their worth doesn't justify a raise. Critics accused Silver of downplaying women's efforts while defending a system that has kept player salaries flat for years. On social media, players like Aja Wilson, Brianna Stewart, and even younger stars started reposting interview clips, adding
The NBA, I think you should look at it in absolute numbers in terms of what they're making, and
I think you should look at absolute numbers in terms of what they're making, because this could be a big increase, right? We don't see in their proposal the max going from 200,000 to 850,000. That's a big increase. That's a big increase, right? The minimum being over the max, right? The minimum was what, 300,000 versus the max this year, which was at 200,000. So it's an increase, which is what he's saying at the end of what he said, right? It's an increase, nonetheless. He said they deserve it and then they'll get it. But the women don't want that increase. They want more.
Silver's argument from a business viewpoint seemed logical. The WNBA doesn't generate the same revenue level as the NBA, and he insisted that pay hikes must align with financial realities. But for the players,
you don't even own half of the revenue yet. Half. Not even 100% like the NBA. They own all their revenue that's coming in. Y'all don't even own half of what's coming into your league. So that 9% might have to stay there the way that he's talking because of how they're falling short already on making enough money to pay for how much the league costs to run.
The moment Adam Silver's clip went viral, WNBA players wasted no time in firing back. What began as quiet frustration rapidly escalated into a full-scale digital protest. The WNBA's Instagram story was merely the spark. Soon, star players started using their own platforms to voice outrage, disbelief, and disappointment. Aja Wilson posted a quote saying, "We bring value every night. Stop acting like we don't." Brianna Stewart reshared the clip with a simple caption, "This is exactly the problem."
As far as shares, now to me it sounds like he's saying we don't necessarily want to increase that share number. We're just going to get a little bit more efficient here and there within the business already, maybe make some cuts, right? Get more efficient within the business, and then that money we're going to give to the players to help their salaries increase and things of that nature.
Within minutes, hashtags like "dang, pay the women" and "not your write-off" were trending across Twitter and TikTok. Players didn't just complain, they educated. Many detailed the time, energy, and personal sacrifice required to maintain a year-round basketball career while juggling overseas contracts to make ends meet. Fans were shocked to discover,
I don't know, man. We might not see a 2026 season because the women do not want to budge, fam. And it's like they want to maneuver like the NBA, but you have to remember that the NBA is making a profit. You have to remember that. Adam Silver and them, they could be using the WNBA as a write-off because yes, there are tax breaks and stuff like that you can use. You can get more money back for actually not making a profit.
younger players, conversely, were more direct. They accused leadership of hypocrisy, saying the WNBA can't demand growth and professionalism while denying fair compensation. Some even compared Silver's tone to past interviews from Kathy Engelbert, suggesting both used corporate jargon to evade real accountability. The fan reaction was equally divided. Player supporters demanded transparency, asking where the league's sponsorship and broadcast revenue was truly going. Others defended Silver, contending the WNBA's financial base isn't strong enough for drastic raises. But amid the clamor, one thing was clear. The players had united around a message. They were tired of being patient, tired of promises, and tired of being told to wait. This wait just days after Adam Silver's remarks ignited social media, the WNBA's atmosphere became more tense. Reporters assembled for what was supposed to be a standard preseason media session, but it transformed into an unfiltered showdown between league executives and frustrated players. Cameras flashed as veteran stars like Breanna Stewart, Ajayi Wilson, and Nneka Ogwumike sat side by side, visibly annoyed yet composed. When a journalist inquired about Silver's no-salary increase position, the room went silent. Stewart leaned forward and said calmly, "We hear them talk about..." Other players followed suit, turning the press conference into a unified front against what they termed corporate gaslighting. Ajayi Wilson added, "We're not asking for millions, we're asking for fairness." The message was powerful. It wasn't a demand born of greed, but of principle. The crowd applauded, and even reporters seemed surprised by the players' raw honesty. Behind the scenes, however, WNBA officials were scrambling. The league's PR team released a statement hours later, asserting that Silver's comments were taken out of context. But that clarification did little to quiet the storm. The players had already redirected the narrative. What made this moment historic was its coordinated feel. For the first time, the league's biggest names weren't just speaking out individually. They were speaking in unison, echoing the same frustrations fans had voiced for years. The press conference completely changed the conversation's tone. It wasn't just about what Adam Silver said, it was about what the WNBA would do next. And as the microphones were turned off, whispers began to spread that the players were planning something even more dramatic, a protest that would shake the league's very foundation. Following the fiery press conference, private talks within the WNBA grew strained. What was once a controlled negotiation had devolved into open rebellion. Inside locker rooms and player group chats, frustration morphed into strategy. According to several insiders, union representatives started circulating messages about potential game boycotts, postponed training camps, and even collective walkouts if their concerns were ignored. Players felt. Meanwhile, Adam Silver and Kathy Engelbert reportedly held emergency calls with WNBA ownership groups to handle the fallout. Leaked details from those meetings revealed that executives were concerned about optics. They didn't want another public relations disaster, especially with broadcast renewal negotiations underway. But when Engelbert attempted to de-escalate by promising incremental, veteran players like Nneka Ogwumike, who had previously helped mediate labor disputes, were in a tough spot. On one hand, she preferred diplomacy. On the other, she saw a new generation demanding direct action and knew they had a point. The old approaches weren't yielding real change. "If the league can't pay us what we're worth," one player reportedly said, "then maybe it shouldn't run like this at all." The tension wasn't purely internal. Sponsors began calling the league office, seeking clarity on the growing controversy. Some brands quietly suspended campaign plans with WNBA players until the situation. By week's end, the situation had gone from tense to explosive. Silver's team aimed to prevent escalation, but the WNBA was done being accommodating. Negotiations had officially become a power struggle, and when rumors of a player-led strike surfaced on social media, fans understood this wasn't just a disagreement, it was war. What started as scattered online outrage quickly transformed into something far more structured. Within a week, WNBA players from various teams coordinated their messaging, timing, and tone. Union leaders, including veterans like Haneka Ogumaike and Brianna Stewart, started hosting virtual meetings with players, strategizing how to maintain pressure on both Adam Silver and Kathy Engelbert without losing steam. The result was a powerfully unified movement that extended beyond basketball into mainstream culture. Every player seemed to deliver the same message: we deserve better. From team press conferences to post-game interviews, they echoed one another precisely. We show up, we deliver, we grow the game, said A.G. Wilson. All we're asking for is a fair share of what we helped build. Fans rallied behind that spirit, flooding the WNBA's official comment sections with support while criticizing leadership for preaching equality but practicing control. Even athletes from other sports, Serena Williams, Megan Rapinoe, and Candace Parker, voiced solidarity online, amplifying the message globally. Meanwhile, sponsors began to notice the increasing unity. Brands that once remained quiet during controversies now had a choice: stand with the players or face public backlash. A few quietly reached out to endorse outspoken players, a symbolic act showing where the cultural tide was turning. One sponsorship executive even admitted anonymously, the players are winning. Media outlets like ESPN and The Athletic started publishing features on the players' courage in confronting league power. Talk shows debated whether Silver had completely mishandled the situation. What began as a salary dispute was now a full-fledged movement for equality, accountability, and respect. The league attempted to wait out the storm, but the players' coordination made that impossible. They were not backing down. The message was clear. This wasn't a fleeting moment, it was a turning point. And just when the WNBA thought the commotion might subside, the players made their most audacious move yet, a direct challenge to the league's leadership. As the movement gathered steam, the players decided it was time to address the issue directly. Behind closed doors, WNBA representatives requested a face-to-face meeting with Adam Silver to discuss what they termed the disrespect behind the decision. The request was initially dismissed, but when media outlets learned of it, public pressure compelled Silver to accept. The meeting, held privately in New York, was tense from the outset. Players arrived prepared with data, evidence, and years of pent-up frustration. They demonstrated how league revenues had increased, how attendance had climbed, and how the arrival of stars like Caitlin Clark had boosted the WNBA's global profile. Yet, despite all that growth, salaries had hardly changed. One player reportedly told Silver, "You can't sell out arenas with our names and then claim we're not profitable." According to sources, the tension was palpable. Silver held his position, asserting that long-term stability was more important than rapid financial adjustments. But that reasoning did not resonate. The players viewed it as another corporate excuse to postpone progress. After the meeting, the players issued a unified statement: "We came to the table in good faith. We left disappointed but not defeated." That sentence went viral. Within hours, journalists depicted it as a direct challenge to Silver's leadership and the NBA's role in women's basketball. Fans started calling for Silver to step away from influencing WNBA operations, arguing his approach treated the league like a side project instead of an equal partner. For the first time, public opinion began to turn sharply against him. Even NBA players, including a few prominent names, hinted at their support for the women. The gulf between leadership and players had never been wider. Silver's attempt to assert authority had backfired completely. What was meant to be a closed-door negotiation had become a national debate, and with tempers flaring and the season nearing, whispers of an organized player boycott started to sound less like a threat and more like a promise. By midweek, talk of a WNBA strike had shifted from rumor to reality. Anonymous sources from several teams confirmed that players were seriously considering a collective action that could stop the upcoming season. For many, this was no longer about a pay increase. It was about power. The players wanted to prove the league could not operate without them, that the faces selling jerseys and tickets were the same ones being underpaid and undervalued. When the news broke, social media erupted once again. Hashtags like WNBA on strike and Stand with the Players flooded timelines, showing that fans were prepared to support the athletes. Inside the league office, panic ensued. Executives knew a strike could cripple an already delicate business model. Networks that had just started to renew broadcast deals threatened to withdraw funding if the season was postponed. Sponsors began reassessing contracts, and team owners quietly called for an emergency summit to avert disaster. But the players remained resolute. They weren't bluffing. They wanted guarantees, not promises. Leaders within the WNBPA started drafting a list of demands: transparency on revenue reports, a higher minimum salary, and a larger share of profits from ticket and merchandise sales. They made it clear that if these issues were not resolved before training camp, they would sit out. Some insiders called it the most unified player stance in WNBA history. The public's reaction was fervent. Fans posted videos of themselves in player jerseys with captions like, "I'll wait for fairness." Celebrities and former athletes voiced their support, framing the strike as part of a larger movement for women's sports equity. Meanwhile, the silence from Silver and Engelbert only added fuel to the fire. The tension reached its peak. The WNBA's image as a progressive, player-centric league was disintegrating, and leadership understood that one wrong move could permanently destroy the league's credibility. All eyes were on Adam Silver. Would he finally concede or let the season implode on his watch? As strike rumors peaked, the WNBA stood at a crossroads. The players' unity had become too powerful to dismiss, and public pressure grew with each passing hour. Major sports outlets began providing live coverage of the unfolding crisis, calling it the biggest labor standoff in the history of women's basketball. Adam Silver, once calm and collected, was now under intense scrutiny. Every word he had spoken about profitability and absolute numbers was being replayed on television screens, a symbol of how disconnected leadership had become from the athletes driving the league's success. Behind the scenes, owners were in a panic. Leaked emails showed several franchises quietly pushing Silver and Kathy Engelbert to find a compromise before the season opener. The last thing anyone desired was an empty arena and a televised boycott that could inflict permanent damage on the league's reputation. In response, Silver called for an emergency meeting with the WNBPA, this time without cameras or PR spin. The tone was markedly different. He reportedly told the players, "You've made your point. Let's find a path forward." The negotiation that ensued lasted late into the night. While players did not secure the 50% revenue share they sought, they achieved something more substantial: a written commitment to increased transparency in league finances, an expanded salary cap, and guaranteed pay raises over the next 3 seasons. It wasn't everything they wanted, but it was a victory earned through solidarity, bravery, and public accountability. When news of the agreement broke, fans celebrated with pride. Players shared a joint post titled, "We Move Together," signifying the end of one of the most tumultuous weeks in league history. For the first time, the WNBA had seen what can happen when its athletes refuse to be quiet. Adam Silver may have weathered the storm, but the message was undeniable. The power balance had shifted. The players had demonstrated they weren't just a part of the league, they were the league. Ultimately, what began as a single comment from Adam Silver turned into a defining moment for the WNBA. The players refused to be marginalized, uniting their voices and compelling real change through pressure, persistence, and purpose. They transformed outrage into action and reminded the world that progress in sports never comes from silence. It comes from standing firm. The struggle for fair pay is not over, but this battle proved one thing conclusively: the future of the WNBA belongs to its players, not its executive, and this time, their voices will not be ignored.